Beat RPGs and defeat your backlog, Part 2, the commenting. Guys, that last video I put out blew up. So many comments, hundreds of comments at this point that I really couldn't keep up, but I tried as best as I could to kind of keep up with a lot of these comments and to respond to as many questions as I could. It has now gotten to the point where I cannot keep up. So this video is going to be kind of like a lot of responding to comments from the last video, questions, and pro tips. We're going to be diving a little bit deeper into this. And the first sort of theme for a lot of these comments that I wanted to respond to is sort of the mindset of tackling your backlog in the first place. The first commenter really received a whole lot of likes, and I feel like I really agree with it as well. And they were saying not to feel obligated to complete your backlog because it is not a chore. And I think that the word backlog in and of itself is sort of a dirty word in some circles because of that mindset that it's not a chore. And the word backlog sort of implies a sort of like homework, a debt to be paid by playing the games at some point, like a time debt. And really, I don't think that's the right mentality at all. I did use the word backlog to quickly and easily convey beating the games that you want to beat. So instead, remember when I say backlog and getting through your backlog, all I'm trying to say is that I want to help you accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. And if you don't want to accomplish that, if that's not a goal of yours, cool. Look at these games. There's no way I'm finishing this, at least not until retirement kicks in. Don't feel guilty about that. It's okay. It's a good problem to have. Having a big-sized backlog means that there's a lot of RPGs or a lot of games out there that you want to play, and that's awesome. That's an awesome feeling. I remember on the Nintendo 64, just hanging out and only having Quest 64 to keep me company. And now we are spoiled for choice. And that kind of leads into another question that somebody else had. And that was, what happens if I don't like a game when I'm playing through it? Personally speaking, because I have the game collection series of videos where I review a bunch of games, I personally choose to go ahead and power through them so that I can review them, and then I'll put out a video saying that, maybe this game might not be for me, and I'll give you the reasons for that. But I don't want to not talk about a game just because it didn't appeal to me. You don't have that obligation. Don't force yourself to finish a game that you're not enjoying. Time is too short for all of us to spend with this pride holding you to this ball and chain if it's keeping you from enjoying things that you would enjoy. Another comment that I received was a pretty interesting one. They said that their therapist had actually recommended something similarly as far as setting aside time for themselves to do things that they enjoy. That was a therapist's suggestion. So I guess I'm just kind of relieved that the advice that I'm giving you isn't complete bupkis as far as like the actual professionals go. I'm really glad to hear that I'm not leading you guys astray. Another question that I got is how do I feel about video game guides? And as far as getting through a backlog, trying to accomplish the things you want to accomplish, personally, I do not feel ashamed of looking up help online. I generally try not to. Generally speaking, I try not to go follow guides to do 100% runs because 100% runs, I feel like they kind of kill my drive to finish the games. It becomes more like a chore, like I'm just following these steps in the guide and I'm not engaging the part of my brain that actually gets to complete the game. I'm just kind of going through the motions that they tell me to, and that's not a super fun thing to do. But if I'm playing a game and I'm making really good progress and then I just suddenly hit a wall, I will run my head up against that wall for maybe 10, 15, 20, maybe even a half hour. I've since caved and started looking up guides for that sort of scenario because, for one, I stream over on Twitch, and that would make for a very boring stream if I am legitimately just hemming and hawing for a half hour straight, just not able to figure out what's going on in the game. And because I'm streaming, sometimes I'll also ask Twitch chat for assistance in certain areas where it's like, okay, I really want to make sure I get this right. I will defer to chat, and if they weren't there, I would defer to a guide. I don't really have a whole lot of pride built up on that. Like I said before, we all got games to play, to get through, and if one thing that you missed, talking to that one NPC to progress the story along, if that's keeping you from moving along, I don't feel like you're missing out on a whole lot there, right? I don't use guides to 100% games. I'll just use them to get over speed bumps and roadblocks and things that otherwise would prevent me from making good progress. The next sort of theme of questions and comments is about trimming the fat Not necessarily every game in the world actually has to be in your backlog. One of the comments that I received was to say that maybe you should try having 2 lists, one just for games that you want to try at some point, and then one for games that you want to beat. And then you only add the games to your list of games to beat once you've actually tried them out and seen if they're for you or not. And that'll sort of help act as a filter between your actual backlog of games you want to finish and the games that you just want to try some point and see if it's for you or not. The next comment is to avoid games as a service model style games like MMOs and instead play games with a defined finish line. And I think that is a huge one. And I didn't talk about that because it didn't occur to me, because generally speaking, I don't play online games. I don't play multiplayer games. I don't play MMOs or MOBAs. I am a single player experience sort of person. So as a result of that, most of the games that I play just have a start, middle, and an end. And so it didn't even occur to me. But yes, MMOs in particular, I have described as being a succubus of a genre because it is the sort of game that just sucks the money and time out of you over and over and over and never really gives you that finish, that satisfaction of having beaten it in the end. And I'm speaking very generally about that genre, of course. I've heard from other people specifically about like Final Fantasy XIV, which doesn't necessarily have that effect, but it is one of those time sinks. But maybe if that's something that you want to play, is to try to set some sort of time limit overall. How many hours do you really want to sink into a single game before you continue on with your backlog? And maybe that's 300 hours. It doesn't have to be, a whole lot of time, but that would be a lot of time. You could finish, hypothetically, 10 Super Nintendo RPGs in about that time. So just keep that in mind when you're deciding what to do with your time. All I'm trying to encourage you to do is to make a conscious decision of where that time goes instead of just letting that time fade away. Time disappears. It's moving whether you're choosing how to spend it or not. So to increase your enjoyment to the maximum, be sure to choose where you're spending that time. One of those other suggestions is to sort of trim the fat by also cutting out like random encounters as you are able to. Whether that's something that's natively supported in the game, or maybe you can use a Game Shark code or something like that if you're using an emulator. Just don't feel like your pride should hold you to playing the games as they were intended initially if it means that you could speed through a little bit faster. Similarly, feel free to use save states and reload from those save states. Feel free to fast forward through certain parts of the game, but a big asterisk on that one for me is that I think that fast forwarding is one of the things that kills my enjoyment of a game whenever I'm emulating it, and why I chose to start playing all my games on original hardware again. So while that worked for me to help sort of continue to build and enjoy my love of RPGs, that might not be for everybody. The next set of comments sort of have the theme of pro tips from viewers that I felt were really applicable, especially to myself, and I might even apply them to myself. And I bet you could enjoy these as well. So the first is to actually kind of keep a journal, an actual journal, to write down what you did, what your current objectives are in the storyline, and any new developments. Keep track of the plot twists and stuff, so in case you do actually have to put the game down for an extended period of time, as even I have to do from time to time, be sure to write that down so that when you come back to it, there's less time trying to remember, trying to think, what was I doing again? Who was that again? Just write down a little bit of the story as you go, so you can have a quick kind of spark notes of what you've done up to that point, and it'll be way easier to pick up where you left off. The next one was to start playing on handheld or mobile games more often when possible. This could be something that you could do on breaks at work. This could be something that you do while commuting to and from work. You can play emulators on your phone. If you have a Nintendo Switch, you can just play a little bit here and there. That's especially helpful for people who don't have large blocks of time to set aside for these games, is to be able to just pick them up and put them down when you're able to. Unfortunately, a lot of older console games didn't really support that natively, but more modern handheld games were designed with that idea in mind, with suspending and being able to save states exactly wherever the heck you are, rather than hunting for save points. And then to address a few of the general comments that I received here, someone said, "Oh, I'm definitely replaying Chrono Trigger again." And I say, go for it. As long as You don't just replay it exclusively. That was kind of the whole point of that. Like, of course you're going to replay Chrono Trigger. Everybody wants to replay Chrono Trigger because it's amazing. You want to do it again. You got to get all the endings and all that stuff, but make sure that you put it in the list first. Don't let yourself get sideswiped by the bus of Chrono Trigger every time you're starting to make progress in a new game. You know, comfort food is there to be eaten, of course, but to keep that from becoming monotonous, make sure that you're spicing things up with variety, right? Variety is the spice of life, as they say. One of the comments that I read that made me extremely happy to hear was when somebody said that this video could have been applied to real life or work projects, anything that they wanted to get done. And, you know, that's exactly right. The last video was essentially a time management and behavioral life hack sort of video as applied through the lens of people who want to play RPGs, because that's what I want to do. But you really could legitimately apply a lot of these strategies to doing anything. One of the questions from commenters that I often saw was, where can I find shorter RPGs to play? And I think that How Long to Beat is a really great resource, but I want to say that Nintendo Entertainment System up through Super Nintendo were pretty much games that could be finished in about 30 hours or less. It wasn't really until the PlayStation era that games really started to balloon in size, because that's when storage became pretty cheap, and then they could just pump up the numbers of how long a game was by, you know, adding a lot of extra stuff, a lot of extra grinding. So my recommendation is, if you want to find games with less grinding, focus on like a really retro stuff, NES to Super Nintendo style, and then skip the PlayStation era. Things got a little out of hand as far as filler content goes that really slows your progress, or how much grinding needs to be done to accomplish anything. Also, definitely take a big look at the indie RPG market right now, because there's a huge renaissance going on right there, and they also respect your time, because it still costs them a lot of time to develop really long and complex stories needlessly. They want to put out the best product that they can, given the amount of time that they have, and as a result, they tend to trim the fat pretty good too, so make sure you check out the indie RPG market right now. Finally, to wrap things up, I wanted to talk about some of the sort of sticky situations that a lot of the viewers that I've spoken with have found themselves in. Somebody mentioned that they had a very physical and mental job that leaves them pretty much thrashed, basically too sore to really even hold a controller anymore by the time that they're done with work. And yeah, you know, that's a really sticky situation to be in. That's a really awful situation, actually. I think that would be really difficult mentally and emotionally. And I hope things that do get better for you. And until they do get better for you and you can play those, the only real recommendation I have would be to try to live vicariously through maybe Twitch streamers and Let's Players. Personally speaking, I also find watching D&D a lot of fun. I don't get to play D&D anymore, but I watch a whole lot of Critical Role when I can, and it definitely does scratch that itch for me. So while it feels really weird to say, you know, go watch a Twitch streamer live vicariously through other people, I can say that it at least works for me on some level, and I hope that somebody in the chat might have a better suggestion for you. Somebody else was talking about scheduling issues and how they just don't have the time or ability to set that in stone. And I think that that is a misunderstanding of what I was trying to convey when I said to set aside time for yourself. When I'm talking about setting aside time for yourself, I don't really mean to block it off in stone. And even though you might not stick to it religiously, it's something that eventually just having it there and having a reminder go off, especially, you know, have a reminder on your phone or something that says, hey, it's time to play a game. Just having that constant reminder, having that opportunity there where nothing else is getting in your way, it will remove obstacles for you. It'll allow you to play games more often than if you hadn't made the mental note to set that aside a time. It's really about removing obstacles between you and the things that you want to do. And on this note, this is something that John from Happy Console Gamer actually kind of drove home to me. We have a video where we did RPG chat. What you don't know is that after that, he kind of took me under his wing for a little bit there and talked to me about, you know, because I was trying to go on YouTube full time. And one of the things that he really drove home to me, he told me that I needed to remove barriers to do that. So if I needed to film things, I should have the camera up and ready to go when the inspiration strikes to start filming. This is something that I think everybody could apply to at least some extent. Remove the barriers from you and the games that you want to play. And maybe that means hook up your console and leave it hooked up, or switch to a handheld that you don't have to hook up. Leave it charged, make sure that it's ready to roll when you are, so that when the opportunity strikes, you can take advantage of it. And then finally, on the subject of children ruining your ability to schedule time to play video games. Like, I know that having children and maintaining those children and rearing those children is a definitely involved process. It usually occurs between the hours that they wake up and the hours when they go to bed. So really, the only thing that you can really do is try to work outside of those hours and wait for them to get to a point when they no longer need you 100% of their waking lives, which can be several years. It should be several years. And I realize that for a lot of people, the time before they wake up and after they go to sleep is the time that you and your significant other may have set aside to stop being parents, essentially, and being a couple again. That's absolutely got to be your priority, right? That's got to be it. There's no way around it. Children are the unending time sink for many, many years. And I feel like that's something that everybody should probably expect when they start rearing children. So hopefully at some point things will get to the point where you can play RPGs again. But until then, as you have time, maybe you could start trying to teach them how to play RPGs and live vicariously through them. Oh my gosh, I've been recording this for over a half hour. I'm going to go ahead and try to edit this down into something manageable and watchable. But if you have any questions or any comments, leave them down in the comments below. If you're new here, do be sure to get subscribed because again, I'm SuperDerek. I make a bunch of thoughtful and thought-provoking videos for gamers who love RPGs. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.